This week on the Media Boss Podcast.
When we think about being everywhere, there's the idea of where are your customers at too, right? And so being everywhere is good, but also making sure that you're especially where your customers are. And if you find that you've got a high amount of your customers on.
Media Boss Podcast is brought to you by two of our new partners. One is Pantheon. I can't wait to tell you about them later. And brought to you by Convert and Flow. You're going to learn so much about them. But now it's time for the Media Boss Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Media Boss Podcast. I'm Dr. Barrett Matthews, and you know what I'm going to say, right? You guys know what I'm going to say starting out. I have a great show and an even greater guest. Now, some of you out there, you're probably hating on me because I have another great guest. I can't help it. They're awesome people. I have nothing to do with it. They just happen to be gravitated to the Media Boss Podcast, as you should too. So today, guess what? We're going to talk a little advertising. That's right. That's a part of the media too, advertising. But I want to talk to you about this gentleman that I have here with me, man. One thing I love about him, he's a Christian man. I love that. He's a man of faith. He is an excellent father. He's an excellent husband. And I wish we had a guitar here because he could play a little guitar. Man, he could sing a little song here for you if he had his guitar, but we don't. So nonetheless, I want to introduce to you and welcome to the Media Boss Podcast, Mr. William Harris. William, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you, man. But first of all, I need to talk to you about advertising. And because, we work in media. A lot of people, they put out their media, but that's something they don't think about is, okay, how do I get sponsorship? How do I get this thing out here? How do I get people to know who I am besides just putting it on social media? So talk to us about advertising and how beneficial, how important that is.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that you talk a lot about is making sure that you're everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when we think about being everywhere, there's the idea of where are your customers at too, right? And so being everywhere is good, but also making sure that you're especially where your customers are. And if you find that you've got a high amount of your customers on one particular social media platform, be there first and then be on the other platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes if you're not getting the reach that you want on that platform, and it's hard sometimes organically to get that reach there, you can use paid promotion to do that. And it's a very, very effective way to do this. When I think about paid promotion on that, a lot of times people get hung up on, well, maybe I need to pay for the conversion or something like that.
Yeah.
And what they don't realize is the cost to reach people when you're paying for a conversion is significantly higher than if you're just going to reach them through what's called like a reach campaign on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got CPM, cost per milli, 1,000, cost per 1,000 people. Let's say that you're going to optimize for a purchase. That might cost $50 to reach somebody to reach a CPM of 1,000 people there.
Yeah.
But if you do it for a reach campaign, that might only cost $5 to reach those same 1,000 people. That's a tenth of the cost. And when you think about it, okay, let's say that your ad is whatever it is, okay? Same ad for either one of these things. You as the consumer, as the person who's seeing the ad, do you know whether they optimize for you to purchase or whether they optimize for you to reach?
A lot of people don't.
No, there's no difference, right? You don't know it. And so you're going to take the same action when you see that ad, regardless of what they did. And so you don't necessarily need to overpay.
Maximize it. Yeah. Got it. That makes perfect sense. Let me ask you, do you find that most people have or do not have an idea of whether they want to go for reach or whether they want to go for conversion?
Most people don't know. And I think the part of that is because there's a lot of documentation out there about making sure that you pay to get the purchases or pay to get the leads or something along those lines. And there's nothing bad about that.
Yeah.
You just have to look at it as a math equation and say, is that the most efficient use of my money for this? And a big part of this can be, let's say that you're reaching a very specific audience. Let's say that you're reaching an audience of a very specific demo in a very specific geo, and there's maybe 10,000 people.
Yeah.
Okay. You could reach out 10,000 people for, maybe $100.
Right.
Very, very simply, if you use a reach campaign. Whereas if you're going to try and do that through a conversion oriented campaign, you might have to pay, several $1,000s to reach the same people with the same ad.
Wow. So how important then, and just what you said, how important is your messaging?
Well, okay. So here's the thing, right? The messaging then is, like you said, if you can reach every single person, no matter what, the message is what differentiates it.
Yeah, I would think.
If that message is not something that is actually going to, attract the right buyer or lead or whatever that is, they're not going to take the action that you want to take. So you still need that message to absolutely nail it.
Yeah.
And I would actually say that the message has become even uniquely more important on a lot of these platforms, because if your message is something that people don't enjoy when you advertise it to them, what does Facebook, TikTok, all of these, what do their algorithms want to do? They want to make sure that people are seeing good content so they stay there and they don't want to leave.
Yeah.
Well, if they're seeing content that they don't like,
They're not engaging. Yeah.
right, guess what? They charge you a premium for that. The cost for you to reach somebody, if your content isn't good, is more than the cost of somebody else whose content is good. It's
Write
not a
that down.
flat CPM,
Write that down.
right? And so if you're not getting the results you want, it may not be that you haven't dialed in your campaigns well. It may just be that you don't have the right message yet.
Whoa. So that leads to the next question. As far as messaging, how many people have the right message?
Oh man, how many? 0%. To a point though, every message can be improved upon.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best things that you can do is we get such good real-time information on the advertising platforms that you can put it in there, see what happens. If it's getting the results you want, great, keep it going. But if it's not, kind of come up with something else, come up with something else, come up with something else. And I think one of the things that people sometimes neglect here is just that basic user research. Go out and talk to people. Who are your ideal customers? What do they like about it? If you make a new ad and you've got a close group of customers, ask them what they think about it.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, William, that I like to tell people is that find out who your ideal clients are. Don't necessarily go to them. Make it so they can find you, because if they're looking for you, your advertisement should draw them anyway.
Absolutely.
And that way you'll know if they're your client because they came to you.
Right.
And it's one of the things that I tell people, because that's one of the biggest paradigms that I want to try to get people to break, because we've been told, go find that avatar and go where they are. No, make yourself findable for them.
Right.
Because if they're looking, I would say McDonald's doesn't come knocking on your door. They make it so you can find them when you want a Big Mac.
I like what you said that. It reminds me of kind of the way that I really like relationships in general. And I think that like marriage relationships and things like that are some of the best ways that we can understand human psychology. And so I like what you said, make yourself findable, but also make yourself attractive.
Hello.
Right. And so let's imagine that it's like you could go to a bar and you could just go up to every single girl and say, hey, do you want to go out with me? Hey, do you want to go out with me? Hey, do you want to go out with me? And it's like, eventually maybe you're going to find somebody who's like, yeah, sure. Why not?
Sure, why not?
Or you could come in there with like, your Letterman jacket on and you're playing a love song on the guitar and every single one of them is like, who's that? I got to need to know this guy, right?
Yeah. And you're right. You got to make yourself attractive. And I don't think a lot of people put enough time into that or enough concern, because I don't think that people have had the right type of training, coaching, whatever you want to call it, when it comes to advertising themselves and their business. Now, I want to find out, tell me about your company and what you do, man.
Sure. So I'm the CEO of ELUMYNT, which is spelled ELUMYNT, a little bit differently.
I like that.
Well, okay, and there's a story. So Google, right, is a misspelling of the number Google, Googol. There was a popular time to misspell words back then. But anyway, so what we do,
That's true. Now that I think about it, a lot of those,
yeah. And so we do advertising for e-commerce stores, though. So the majority of our customers are on Shopify, spending maybe $100,000 a month, and we're helping them optimize those ads to be able to get the most profit that they can and expand their businesses. We've done this so successfully that we've actually helped 13 customers get acquired. So the largest one sold for $800 million. We just missed our unicorn, right? You got to get to that 1 billion stage, but we got really close. And so this is something that I'm something that I'm very passionate about, though.
Wow. That's amazing. So, okay, you got to go into a little bit more detail on this for me if you can.
So a big part of what we're looking at when we're doing the advertising is exactly those same tricks that I just mentioned, where it's like, wait, why pay $50 to reach 1,000 people if I could pay $5,000 to reach those same 1,000 people? So we're looking at optimizing around EBITDA. Profit. So EBITDA, for those who may not know, is earnings before interest, tax deductions, and amortization or appreciation. One of those I can't remember right off the top of my head here. But the idea here behind this is, how do we make sure that when we spend advertising dollars, that it doesn't just result in more revenue, but let's say at a lower profit, because maybe they did a sale or something like that. How do we actually make sure that it results in a higher profit at the bottom line on this? And so one of our tactics is, if you're going to do a reach campaign, $5 to reach those 1,000 people in platform, in Facebook, in TikTok, or whatever the platform is, the return on ad spend that you would get there that's attributed back to it, next to nothing. because it's not looking to attribute it back to that.
Okay. Okay.
So, but the amount that you would get attributed in platform to the conversion campaign would be a lot more. And so one would think, oh, this one's performing better. But let's say we ignore these attributions. Let's pretend that this was a billboard.
Yeah. Okay.
How much attribution do you get from a billboard? Not very much. You can't tell whether it worked or not. How do you tell whether the billboard worked or not? You were getting 5 calls a day and you're getting 10 calls a day now. Well, the billboard's working, right?
Yeah.
So we do the same thing in e-commerce where we say, listen, if we do this one and we pay $5 to reach these 1,000 people, do your sales go up? Let's do that again. Do your sales go up again? Let's do it again. Let's keep going up. And so if you keep tracking this and it goes up and up and up, you say, you know what? Are we maybe moving past correlation and we're starting to see causation now? If you push your foot on the gas pedal and your car starts going, it doesn't matter if the speedometer is not working.
Right.
You know the car's moving. Fast, you know it's doing what it needs to do.
I like that. I like that. I like the way you explained that. It made it easy for people to understand. That was very good. So in doing that with your company, first of all, how long has your company been around?
Started officially in 2013, but I didn't start taking it seriously till 2015.
Now, what does that mean?
Okay, so I started doing it by accident. I had done some marketing for a couple of other companies. There was a VC-backed SaaS company called When I Worked that I started working at. Grew them 270% in 7 months. Started writing about what I was doing on Entrepreneur, on Fast Company, and people had started saying, "Oh, hey, I've got a company. Grow my business." Well, yeah, I actually can. I know the right people. And so I brought some contractors in that I knew and started working on growing their businesses. And it was an agency more or less from like a protection standpoint of like just running it as just, a solo guy. It's like, okay, let's set this up as an LLC and whatever. But I didn't take it seriously. It was just people that were just coming to me saying, hey, help me grow my business. Sure, I like helping people and I can do this, right? 2015, though, was when I really started buckling down a little bit more. And it's probably not until 2018 that I was like, oh, wait, this is actually my full-time job. I need to go all in on this.
So what changed within taking it seriously? What did you do differently?
Yeah. So one of my business mentors, Dave Morrison, he started the Anytime Fitness franchise, one of the co-founders there. I remember talking to him about how I love solving problems. But I love solving big problems, massive problems. And I can get bored by like simple problems. And I remember him talking to me. And so I was kind of bored with the agency a little bit, like bored and just thinking, it's like, I do this and it makes money, but it's like, but that's not what I want to do. He said, what if that's the big problem that you're supposed to solve? Do you think that all the other agencies out there are doing a bang up job? Are they just nailing it for every customer? Right. Are they taking good care of their employees? Why don't you solve that problem? Oh, oh, that's interesting. Right. And so I started buckling down. It's like, okay, how do we make sure we'd been doing a great job for customers, but how do I make sure that I start putting together a company that will take good care of its employees as well? And that was a really big revolution for me.
So you were mentioning a lot about Shopify. What got you into that realm?
Oh yeah. I think, part of the thing that I really like about e-commerce in general is that it's immediate feedback. We are all like a little bit addicted to dopamine now, right? We get this immediate feedback on our social media likes and whatever. Well, if I spent money on e-commerce, more often than not, a lot of brands, it's like they're getting the revenue back that day or the next day or within that week. Well, if you're doing like lead gen or something like that, it's like, well, maybe you get some leads, then, the sales team maybe closes them. But if the sales team doesn't get a job, and so it's like months later, and you're just like, I don't know if it worked or not. And so it's kind of frustrating. This was very immediate, like, hey, this worked, this didn't work, changed, this worked, this worked. So it played into maybe my ADHD, right? A little bit. And then Shopify specifically because they were well, when we first started, they weren't the biggest, but right now they're the platform to be on. What's interesting is when I started Shopify, there was a conference called IRCE, Internet Retailers Conference and Expo. It used to take place in Chicago. They've changed the name of it now. But at the time, it was the biggest retail conference, internet retail conference. And when I migrated one of the websites that I was working on at the time from Magento over to Shopify Plus, their enterprise solution, Shopify did not even have a 10x10 booth at IRCE. That's how small Shopify was at this time.
Really?
Completely.
It's hard to imagine that.
Right.
It's really hard to imagine that. Because it seems like Shopify's always just been big.
Right. Like they just kind of took over and okay, that's who it is.
Wow. That's good to know. So you taught me something earlier when we were talking about e-commerce and the sales numbers on that. And I was blown away. Can you mention that again? That was amazing.
Yeah. Are you talking about how like the profitability aspect of it? So a lot of times when people are looking to optimize their e-commerce stores, they're looking at something and they'll say, all right, we're getting like maybe and I'm going to throw out some numbers here and I'm going to make sure I try and define them. Maybe we're getting a 5x MER. MER for anybody who's listening is media efficiency rate, right? And so that means if you take the revenue from your store, divide it by your ad spend, that's that number. So let's say you made $100,000 and you spent $10,000, you've got a 10x MER. Okay. It's a really great number. The problem is it doesn't tell you anything about the profitability. For one company, that might be unprofitable. For another company, that might be exceptionally profitable.
Okay.
And so what we started working on then is how do we actually start getting into the P&Ls for these businesses? So that way I know if a 10X is profitable or not. If a 10X is not profitable for them, maybe we need to adjust that and go up to a 12X or 15X. Or what's interesting is maybe we can reduce that profitability or the return there from maybe a 10X down to an 8X, but scale it maybe 300% more. The actual profit dollars they make from that is significantly more, even though we lowered the return on each individual item.
Okay, that makes sense. That really makes sense. Now, I want to ask you because there was something else you mentioned too that blew my mind. It really blew my mind. You asked us all a question.
Oh,
yeah. You want to do that? You want to do that one too?
So yeah, and I'll give them a chance to answer the question themselves before we move on. If you had to guess what percentage of e-commerce sales are of total retail sales, right? So total retail sales, what percentage does e-commerce make of that? What were people saying at the table?
We had 85%. I said 72%. Somebody said they would have guessed like 99%.
Yeah, right.
And of course, one was chicken and he didn't guess.
That's fair. So it's about 15%.
15.
Right. Very, very little still. And so when you think about this, you're not too late to the e-commerce game. Anybody that's thinking about, oh, I really wish I would get in there. And it's like, well, there's already a store for this or this or that. Yeah, there is. But guess what? There's a lot of room for disruption still. If you still get into this game, you are still very early into the e-commerce game. And I think that's important for people to recognize. There's a lot of opportunity for growth here.
That's amazing. Because I swear, I would have never in a million years guessed that because, all we hear now is e-commerce.
Sure.
And like one of the gentlemen at our table, he was saying that I just thought that retail was dead.
Right.
A lot of people thought retail, because let's face it, during COVID, we've seen a lot of retail stores close down. Now, I'm sure e-commerce has some closings too, but we don't hear about those.
Right.
We see the retail in our own neighborhood, our own community. We see the retail closing down and we're thinking, wow, they can get it online now. They don't need it. And we saw a surge in food delivery and all that stuff. So it's like, that we figured e-commerce would be a ruling thing, but 15%. It's amazing.
It's very small. And I don't remember the exact number. The last number I remember seeing for China is something like 80% or 85%.
Oh, really?
So significantly more. So we have a lot of room for growth. And I think we were talking about, this is not financial advice here.
Right.
Consult your CPA and your financial
We're not telling them to do anything. We're just saying it's just a number.
Right. So do with it what you will. But what's interesting then is, if China's like 80, 85%, whatever that is, there's a lot of room for growth on e-commerce. But like you said, I think one of the sad things is that we did see a lot of decline in retail throughout the COVID stuff, about closures and things like that really impacted that. But I think what's going to be interesting is I think that we can start seeing a resurgence in some aspects of that, where I think retail and e-commerce are going to blend. And so in the e-commerce space, there's a lot of people that we would call almost like disruptors, and they came in and they absolutely disrupted things. You've got people like Purple Mattress, right? Which is we're right here in Salt Lake City. They're based right here as well.
Right.
And they disrupted mattresses in a pretty big way. But what's interesting, and I'm not talking about them specifically, but a lot of these disruptors, they went so hard after, let's say, customer acquisition, and a lot of disruptors are actually struggling significantly by being e-commerce only as well. And they need to start coming into offline as well, into retail sales. And so there's a blend that is needed for both. And I think that that's probably going to be true for a long while yet, at least. And I think that one of the nice blends is going to be maybe similar to even what IKEA has done, where it's like you can go in there and you can actually explore it, not just on shelves, but you're exploring the environment in which this exists.
Yeah. So we have a couple seconds. I want to give you a chance to just tell our audience anything that they can support you, anything you have going on that they can support you with.
You know what? Just maybe give me an encouraging word every now and then. On Twitter, probably William Harris 101, which is just WMHARRIS 101. But any of us, I'm sure that you can relate to this as well. We're out here, we're saying things that are sometimes different than maybe what you're hearing other places. Amen. And sometimes we all just need an encouraging word here as well. So
exactly. All right. Support William Harris, guys. Thank you for joining each other, the Media Buzz Podcast. Everybody, we'll be right back.
Hey, everybody, the Media Boss Podcast has been brought to you by our partners, Pantheon and Convert and Flow. Make sure you get with us so you can find out more about how you can help your business run smoothly with Pantheon and Convert and Flow.